I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
And wow, Mackey here, solo on a Friday night. Just enjoying my Friday night, kicking back, hanging out with my lovely wife, our dog. I was actually watching the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. Really interesting if you're a wrestling fan. I pick up my phone, start scrolling through Twitter, and all of a sudden, holy cow, one of the biggest blockbuster trades in recent Minnesota sports history. And I'm just going to unpack this as I see things coming across here on Twitter. Karl-Anthony Towns traded at, again, 9:30 Central Time on a Friday night, just a few days before the Timberwolves report for training camp. Monday is media day. Tuesday is the first training camp practice. I think Thursday is their first preseason game. So this came right down to the end of the offseason. And here's the trade. And I've just been taking notes off the top of my head the last, 20 minutes or so. And I'll just run through my notes, stream of consciousness here. But the Knicks receive Karl-Anthony Towns. And no, this is not a prank. This is not April Fool's. This is a real NBA trade that's happening. Although Adrian Wojnarowski hasn't reported it, nor will he, because, he's now the general manager of St. Bonaventure basketball. So I don't know if I fully trust it unless it's a Woj bomb. But cat to the Knicks, and the Timberwolves receive, according to multiple reports, Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick from the Detroit Pistons. And I will just say, there's a chance that there could be other tentacles. There could be another move coming at some point between now and maybe the trade deadline. We don't know exactly if this is the completed path for the Timberwolves. I've got some theories on this, but again, if you're just jumping on this live stream here on the Score North YouTube channel, Emergency Flagrant Howls, Karl-Anthony Towns traded to the New York Knicks. Timberwolves get Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, first-round pick from Detroit. Most NBA pundits are jumping on saying, what the hell are the Timberwolves doing? They can see this makes sense for the Knicks for different reasons. I'm going to unpack some of this. So, number one, Tim Connolly generally cooks in the 2 years since he's been here. When he made that Rudy Gobert trade 15 minutes into his tenure, people hammered him. They hammered him the day of. They hammered him the day after. They hammered him 6 months after. Well, he was right about the Gobert trade. It took until the second season for it to really pay off, but the Timberwolves became one of the four best teams in the league, Western Conference Finals, in large part because Rudy Gobert was the anchor for the number one defensive team in the entire league. So generally, Tim Connolly, the Mike Conley trade, getting rid of D'Angelo Russell, he has a great sense for roster building, for chemistry, for X's and O's. So I trust Tim Connolly first and foremost until he proves otherwise. So that's sort of my general stance. Number two, I think the Wolves looked at, before we even talk about the players they got back, I think they looked at Karl-Anthony Towns and had a few different reasons why they might be looking to unload him between now. I thought this was going to happen maybe next summer. Age, he's 29, so he'd be 30 years old going into a $53 million year of that contract, 2025-26. So $49 million this year, $53 million next year, $57 million, and then a $61 million player option in 2027-28 when he would be like 32 or 33 years old. 7-footers don't play forever at a super high level. He's had pretty significant injury issues the last couple years. Not nearly as durable as he was earlier in his career. That contract looks more and more like an albatross when you start to look at where they're at with the second luxury tax apron, the money that you're now paying to Jaden McDaniels, who's 6 years younger, and Anthony Edwards. So I get why they would look at that contract as something to get out from underneath. By the way, Julius Randle, 30 years old, $29 million this year, and then a player option for 2025-26. So you might just be clearing that money off the books. And then Donte DiVincenzo, this is a really team-friendly contract. 27 years old, great three-point shooter. He ramped up from being a role player in Milwaukee and Golden State to being a 30-plus, 35 minutes a game guy with the Knicks, a really good Knicks team. He's under contract for 3 more years, $12-ish million a year. So super bargain on that contract. And then the first-round pick from Detroit. So I see why the Wolves didn't like the Cat contract when you're looking out 2-3 years down the road. I mean, we've talked about this a million times going back the last couple 2-3 playoff runs for the Wolves. Cat's performance in the playoffs takes a dip, whether it's just emotions or not having enough of an offensive bag. I mean, there's really no way to get around the fact that his performance takes a big dip from regular season. Efficiency, scoring, foul trouble ramps up. Not in every game, but just like overall snapshot of Cat in the playoffs. It's not great compared to his regular season. By the way, same can be said for Julius Randle. So it's not like they're swapping out Cat for a guy that's been gangbusters in the playoffs. DiVincenzo, I think you could make a case that his performance has carried over in some key spots. So it's shocking the timing of this. But if you were to have kind of zoomed out and said, hey, even going back to last year, right, at some point in the next couple of years, are the Wolves going to trade Karl-Anthony Towns? I don't think that is necessarily a shock. But I think just the timing of it, the fact that it didn't happen maybe back in July or a year ago, man. I've just been writing down thoughts the last 15 or 20 minutes. So I'm just going to spew some of these for you guys. And I can pop maybe some questions and comments on the screen. People asking, where's Kyle? I think Kyle just tweeted he's a third martini deep right now, out having a good time. Jubb was at the Twins game tonight. So here's me solo, just having a low-key Friday night, seeing this come across. The Wolves lose some size here. Cat's 7 foot. One of the big reasons why the Wolves gave the Nuggets so much trouble. I mean, Cat was guarding Jokic in that playoff series. Cat was making it harder for Kevin Durant in the first round. I mean, major credit to Karl-Anthony Towns in the playoffs defensively. Offensively, very much hit or miss. But, Julius Randle is more like 6'8", 6'9". DiVincenzo is a guard. So the Wolves going from being one of the biggest teams in the NBA, they take a little bit of a step back in size, although this does open up potentially more minutes, depending on what they do with Randle. He's been like a 34, 35 minutes guy for the Knicks. Maybe you get away with decreasing his minutes and give some minutes to Naz Reid. Does this open a door for Naz Reid to go from 23, 24 minutes up over 30 minutes? So that could make some sense. Financially, the Wolves, not only just for financial reasons, in fact, I've been told that the Wolves were planning, with Glenn Taylor still as the owner going into the season, we're planning to take potentially up to a 9-figure loss on this year's team with the second apron luxury tax payments. They don't have a state-of-the-art new arena where they're bringing in as much revenue, and the TV situation is kind of up in the air. But so they're spending a lot of money on this team, and then even competitively, you don't want to sit in that second apron because it really limits what you can do from a roster building standpoint. So at some point, they were going to look to offload some money going into like 2025. So that part of it makes some sense here. But yeah, man, I'm just looking at the rotation here now and again. Maybe there's another shoe to drop. I'm refreshing Twitter here just to see if there's something else coming down the pipeline. I wanted to wait like 30 minutes to see. By the way, John Krasinski from The Athletic saying, one thing to be clear on tonight, Karl-Anthony Towns did not request this trade. He never has requested a trade in 9 years with the Timberwolves. Cat did tweet just ... He did an interview with somebody I saw a day or two ago, too, where he was talking about the upcoming season with the Timberwolves and how they can take the next step. Here's more from The Athletic. The word from the Towns camp is stunned. 9 years with the Wolves, impeccable in the community, all-star, all-NBA, now a New York Knick. So, man, there's going to be a lot to talk about at Wolves Media Day on Monday here. So here's what their rotation looks like right now after the offseason moves without another shoe dropping. Maybe there's something else coming down the pipe here. But just what we know right now, 30 minutes after this news drop, you got Rudy Gobert. I would guess Julius Randle stepping into the starting rotation in place of Cat with Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley. And then your second unit consists of some combination of Naz Reid, Donte DiVincenzo. By the way, I love Donte DiVincenzo. One of my favorite role players in the NBA the last couple of years. So I stand for Donte DiVincenzo. He does help make up for the shooting that you lose. There's been some years where Julius Randle is a lights-out three-point shooter, but he can be really inconsistent from week to week, from month to month, from year to year. So, you're losing one of the great shooters in the league in Karl-Anthony Towns, but DiVincenzo helps make up for that. Maybe more Naz Reid minutes helps replenish some of that lost shooting. But Naz Reid, DiVincenzo off the bench, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then you got Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, Joe Ingles. Then there's probably another tier after that where you got your Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, TJ Warren, PJ Dozier on the roster, Luka Garza, obviously, Jalen Clark coming off missing last year with the injury. So, yeah, just a crazy, crazy news drop on this Friday. I think, obviously, my stance on Karl-Anthony Towns throughout the years has been well documented on Flagrant Howls and Mackey and Judd, our other podcast. But he is, despite his frustrating flaws and the things that I would get on him for the last few years, he is one of the 2 or 3 best players in franchise history. I mean, not that it's not like the Lakers list that you're going through, but it's Kevin Garnett at the top. I think Karl-Anthony Towns, probably the second best player in franchise history, almost a decade, going through a bunch of different coaches, front offices, roster shakeups, and he's just been a consistent offensive force in this league. When it became evident that Anthony Edwards was ascending to really be the number 1 player pecking order wise in this franchise, and Rudy Gobert comes in and sort of bumps Cat off the 5. Hey, Cat, we need you to figure out how to fit yourself in this new machination. And he did a great job last year of just finding his own role and still getting his while fitting into a team that went to the Western Conference Finals. But I will say, man, at the end of the day, if the goal is for the Wolves to take the next step and win a championship, I don't think you can have Karl-Anthony Towns as the second best player on your team. That's been my take for the last couple of years. That being said, I don't know that if Julius Randle is now the second best player on the, I don't know that you're winning a championship with Julius Randle as the second best player on the team. So it kind of feels like, if you talk to Knicks fans, and I've got a couple friends who are Knicks fans, they've been super frustrated with Julius Randle in certain ways. So you're sending a guy out that Knicks fans are just, hey, good riddance, go try somewhere else. They feel like it's a rejuvenation with Karl-Anthony Towns coming in. For the Timberwolves, maybe they felt like, yeah, we're not with as much money as he's owed over the next few years. Like, we're not. It's too hard to make it work financially, roster wise. He's going to be 30 years old in a year, and so I get why both teams would be looking to make this change. And if you're the Wolves, you just, man, this is a pretty big haul. I think if you were to have traded Cat maybe at his peak a couple years ago, do you get multiple first round picks back instead of just the 1 first round pick? We can have debates over the value of this trade, but man, this is wild. This is pretty wild. And now you've got to just jump right in here. Okay, hey, we're shaking up the starting lineup, shaking up the bench, and we're taking this franchise cog out of the machine basically 2 days before players are reporting for media day and training camp. So, wow. We got 2,400 people hanging out with us here at 10 o'clock on a Friday night Central Time. And I'll just repeat it. Maybe you're just jumping in. Maybe you've got your buzz on a Friday night. You're wondering, what's happening? Why is Mackey live? Why is Flagrant Howls live right now? Karl-Anthony Towns traded to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick it's via the Detroit Pistons. Crazy, man. Let me just see if there's any other news or tentacles here. And we'll have plenty more on this. We will, I think Judd and Kyle are both going to be at Media Day on Monday. Ramona Shelburne from ESPN.com says Karl-Anthony Towns is still processing this trade. According to a source close to him, it's worth noting that Knicks coach Tom Thibodeau has been publicly very complimentary of him since he left Minnesota, something that's been noted by Towns. Towns, of course, is from New Jersey and used to be represented by Knicks president Leon Rose. So there's always been that. I mean, Doogie's talked about that connection for a couple years. So there's a lot of homecoming to this story, but Towns was in the gym today in Minnesota preparing to build off last season's Western Conference Finals run. Yeah, man, that's another tentacle to this too. The rekindling of Tom Thibodeau and Karl-Anthony Towns. And then Karl-Anthony Towns with New York media. You know, a little bit of a different vibe with how aggressive the New York media can be and the demands, and you have a bad game or you come up short in a playoff series. You're going to have a few more people lobbing questions and writing critical things about you. So, yeah, man, crazy stuff here on a Friday night. Crazy, crazy stuff. I just wanted to jump on quick and give you guys the update. Plenty more to come here in the next few days as we get more information. At some point, we're going to hear from Tim Connolly and Chris Finch. I know those guys were scheduled to speak on Monday at Media Day. I'm guessing they probably will just keep that slot. I don't know that they're going to jump in and do something on Saturday, Sunday. If they do, we can jump on and react here on Flagrant Howls. But, man. Yeah, I think I agree with Robbie B here in the comments section. In Tim Connolly, we trust. You know? And then Obscure Manifesto says Julius Randle solves what? I don't think it's about Julius Randle. I think a couple things here, and then I'm going to say goodbye and continue on my Friday night here. But Julius Randle is only under contract for one more year. I think again, who knows? Maybe there's another shoe to drop. But I think DiVincenzo, 27 years old, he kind of fits the timeline. 3 years left on his deal. Super team friendly. Julius Randle is 30 years old, so he's older than Cat. He's like a lesser version of Cat. Like I think Cat is a better player than Julius Randle. And to me, Randle comes in here to help essentially fill the salary slot for a year, and then he can opt out. There's a player option. Maybe he looks at it, going to turn 31 years old. Maybe I think his player option is like $30 million. If he feels like he's got some juice left, does he go get like $100 million 3-year contract or something from somebody? It might just be 1 year of Julius Randle. Maybe you even flip him trade deadline or something. I don't think Tim Connolly is looking at this puzzle saying, if we can just get Julius Randle to replace Karl-Anthony Towns. I think it's about leveraging the asset, the basketball asset that is Karl, and selling high while you can. Selling high while he's pretty healthy, coming off a pretty damn good year. They make a deep playoff run. I mean, there's no guarantees that Karl's stock at age 29 is going to be this high again. And if you're trying to freshen this up and clear a runway for a longer period of contention with Anthony Edwards, you know, I think the biggest question short term, long term, I get it. Totally get it. Cat is not going to be part of this thing in 3, 4, 5 years as he gets older. Short term, are you getting worse in 2024-25 when your window is open to make a run in the Western Conference? We could have that debate. And then some of this is going to depend too on, like, is Rob Dillingham going to be good as a rookie? Terrence Shannon Jr. Does Jaden McDaniels take a step forward offensively? So again, I don't think it's Julius Randle is like maybe the fourth most important piece to this. Cat out is a piece. DiVincenzo, interesting value piece. a first-round pick, so you get an asset. And maybe there's something else. And I see this from Go Skate, Minnesota. Nas is better than Julius Randle. I agree, by the way. Julius Randle has played more bulk minutes. We haven't really, that's one thing about Nas is we've never seen like a 35-minute, like a consistent 35 minutes a night version of Nas. What does that look like? That's a different workload. That's a different beast. I don't know if they would flip the script and have Nas come into the starting rotation, because Nas and Rudy Gobert actually pair really well together. The first year they played together, you look at some of the lineup like plus minuses and combos, and it was a disaster. But last year, those guys played off each other really well. Would you try to bring Randle off the bench? A lot of interesting conversations to be had here. And Chris Finch, man, this is now the second time in 3 years where Tim Connolly has said, hey, I'm going to throw you a gigantic curveball. Here comes a Rudy Gobert curveball. Figure it out in the next 3 months and put a team together. And then this one, the runway is even shorter. So a bunch of you guys are asking about KD. And I'll tell you, man, that was my reckless speculation from a few months ago. Could you imagine if this was all part of a flip, essentially, of Cat for Kevin Durant, like a year, maybe 2 years of, I have to pull up his contract, but man, I think Anthony Edwards, and if there's even like a year of juice left in Kevin Durant, man, that would be fun. So, all right, I think I'm going to wrap this thing up here. But wow, what a news break on a Friday night here. Karl-Anthony Towns, 9 years, probably the second best Timberwolf in franchise history. And Tim Connolly decides to send him to the Knicks for Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo, and a first-round pick. So we'll keep an eye on anything else off this trade. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday night. I'm going to go maybe pour myself a cocktail here. Continue to process what just happened. That's a wrap on this episode of Flagrant Howls, your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.